Join me today in making a light and fluffy, cotton-like Japanese-style cheesecake, a perfect everyday dessert. I'm Kat, owner of Charmin Shake Baking, and welcome to my channel. I'll be making a 6-inch cake, but you can double the quantities in the description below to make an 8 or 9-inch cake. Start by melting together the butter, cream cheese, and milk on medium-low heat. Reduce the heat to low and keep mixing by switching to a wire whisk to make a smooth mixture. Take the mixture off the heat and allow it to cool to lukewarm. In the meantime, whisk the egg yolks, then slowly add to the warm cream cheese mixture. Make sure that the mixture isn't too hot or you'll end up with scrambled cream cheese. Then pour the mixture into a mixing bowl and set aside. In another bowl, beat the egg whites until foamy, then add the cream of tartar. Always use egg whites that are room temperature, and fresh eggs are always best. Keep beating until you reach soft peaks, then add the sugar a little at a time. We're basically making a meringue at this point. Keep beating until you reach soft peaks, then add the sugar a little at a time. We're basically making a meringue at this point. Then add the vanilla extract and continue to beat until you reach stiff peaks. Make sure the cream cheese mixture isn't too hot. Then sift in the flour and cornstarch. Gently fold it in, being careful not to overmix. I'm using a spatula and not a whisk, breaking down the flour lumps with the spatula. Gently fold in the egg whites 1/3 at a time, being careful not to overmix or you'll end up deflating the mixture. This will result in a souffle-type cake with a lot of air and almost cotton-like, unlike the typical cheesecake, which is more dense. Notice how I'm folding over the egg whites and not stirring. We want to keep this very, very light and fluffy. Pour the batter in a 6-inch pan lined with parchment paper on the bottom and grease sides, which is then placed in a larger pan with a cloth underneath to keep the cake from floating as it's baking. The batter will seem very high, but not to worry as it won't overflow. Then add hot water until it reaches halfway up the sides of the pan. Since this is a light and delicate cake, we're going to be baking it at a low temperature of 300 Fahrenheit for 30 minutes, and then reducing the heat to 280 Fahrenheit and baking an additional 1 hour. I've got some cracks on my cake, but there's a couple things you can do to fix it. One is to add a little hot water with your fingertips, which might reduce the cracks after cooling. Or you can flip the cake and keep the top side down, which I'll be doing later. After the cake's cooled for 15 minutes, run a knife or spatula around the sides of the cake to release. Take a cake board and flip the cake over. Then peel off the parchment paper. I've got a couple lines here because the parchment paper wasn't completely straight on the bottom, but that's okay because I was planning on decorating anyways with some cherry blossoms, since this is a Japanese cheesecake and cherry blossom is a Japanese tree. A couple years ago, I planted a double blossom cherry tree in my backyard for my daughter, and although it's still young, the flowers are so beautiful. The blossoms only last a couple weeks in May, so I had to plan to make this cake while the blossoms were at their peak. I'm going to cover up that line with the cherry blossoms in a half moon shape, and then dust with some icing sugar. I would have added blossoms on the whole cake, but I need to cut it. Be very careful when cutting this cake as it's very soft and delicate. You can see the texture on how it resembles more of a sponge cake than a typical cheesecake. Let's taste this beauty. It's very light, not too sweet, with a nice light cream cheese flavor. And it almost feels like cotton. Some people even call this a cotton cake. If you're not much of a dessert person, but still want a little something after dinner, this is the perfect cake to have. I would actually even have this for breakfast. Thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And like always, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to help support my channel. Happy baking!